This is EF Outbound, a podcast that showcases transformative travel stories that defy our expectations, challenge our assumptions, and teach us something new about the world and ourselves. I'm Shelby Elatmani, and I'll be your host for this episode. For as long as she can remember, Izzy's dad was always on the move.
My dad had this passion for travel, I think greater than anybody I've ever met in my life. My dad is the first one to have immigrated to the United States in his family, got a work visa, and he worked for the airlines. He would jump around from airline to airline. He was in sales, he did baggage, stewarding, and there were some jobs when he's like, I really don't want to be doing this, but whenever he would be in an airport, he'd be like, no matter how many times somebody assaults me to my face because their bags are gone and I don't know where these bags are, he'd be like, at least I get to go somewhere after this, you know?
Today on EF Outbound, a story about a father, a daughter, and the wanderlust that binds them. One of the perks of working for the airlines was that Izzy's dad could get discounted tickets to nearly anywhere in the world. So as soon as she could walk and talk, Izzy was also on the move.
He was taking us to Colombia when I was 2 years old. We went to Tokyo when I was 12, London, Paris. It was just part of the fabric of my identity. It'd be like a weekend or it'd be a fast layover because my dad was always working too. So he was juggling, I think, at the busiest time in his life, like 10 jobs. We were quite destitute. I think I had moved a total of 10 times, just all around the United States and back and forth from the Philippines. My dad would bring me to the United States, and then when they didn't have enough money to afford me, they would send me back to the Philippines to live with relatives over there. We lived in a garage at one point in my life, a 5-person family existing on one queen-size bed. I remember cockroaches used to crawl out of the tile. And I remember we penny pinched because the end reward would always be this trip. And that just meant so much more to us. But yeah, just some days when I would be super hungry, but we're going to Paris. I was 6 years old. I had grown obsessed with the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he was like, okay, we're gonna go to Paris, and we're gonna see the Notre Dame Cathedral in real life. And he bought the tickets for that weekend. I don't actually think I remember any of these specific places, but what I do remember is these certain memories about how I would clutch onto my dad's jacket because he's like, Quasimodo's in the rafters right now. And then afterwards we would admire the stained glass. When we saw the Eiffel Tower, we weren't necessarily going up. I only remember standing side by side in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. I don't remember staying in a nice place. I don't remember eating at nice places, but what I do remember is that loaf of baguette, because he said, this is how they do it over here. And then we would just sit in front of a very centrally located space and admire the surroundings. And yeah, that just stuck with me. He would brief us on all of the geographic stats of this place and give us a crash course on these languages. My first taste of sushi was out of a vending machine in Japan. My first horseback ride was in the Grand Canyon. And that was our education with my father. He had such an appreciation for the world as an educator. So he's like, what I can't teach you, the world will. In travel, he didn't have to be in a school environment to learn. And of course, it makes you more qualified to have tons of degrees or tons of wealth, but for him, what he would flaunt is how many places he would have been. So I think it gave him a lot of pride.
With her dad, the world was full of happiness and magic, and nothing was impossible.
One of my best memories was us going to Rome, and it was during a layover. We only had 6 hours outside of the airport before we had to make our connecting flight. And my dad was like, we have to go outside of the airport. It was a rainy night, really cold night in March, and he rushed us over to the Trevi Fountain. I remember like the emptiness of this place. That stillness of us, just me and my dad, it was echoing. And he gave me like his 3 coins and he said, make a wish on each coin. And then he's like, this gesture ensures that you're going to come back here one day. And I was like, yeah, my dad's always thinking about the future, like best interests at heart. He just like secured me this ticket. I feel like he thought travel was like his gift to us. And it really was. I don't feel anything in my life that gives me as much permanence as the way that did for me, you know, like just making travel a part of the everyday. I wouldn't call my dad my hero, but he was a person who, if he wanted something to happen, it would happen.
Eventually, though, the family trips went by the wayside. Izzy and her siblings were older and more involved with school, and her father left the airline industry. Then, Izzy's magical world came to an abrupt halt.
I was 16 when my parents had separated. What I noticed about my dad, he was already out of touch with reality as is. Like, he would formulate his own rules, and he'd be like, oh, I'm just going to go to the Philippines and, you know, talk to my family, and I think I need to be with my family. And it's just like, well, that's your extended family, but your immediate family, the ones you need to deal with right now are right here, and you need to talk to us. But he would go and do his thing and then take a side trip to Indonesia and do that thing. And we were like, okay, well, your family's falling apart right now, so I think you should get back here and figure things out. And at that time, I realized that maybe something wasn't okay with my dad. I think travel just made him feel really good about himself. Travel for him was really like his escape. I mean, like, if anything stressed him out, he would go somewhere, feel better, come back, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It just gave him a sense of fulfillment that I think nothing else in the world could give him, like this realistic world.
Suddenly, those magical trips to Paris and Rome and all over the world didn't seem quite so magical anymore.
When I came into the understanding of like maybe why my dad traveled so much, it made me feel scared. I was like, so what you're saying to me, and like hypothetically speaking, my father, like what you're saying to me is that you can only feel settled when you're away from us, like when you've gone somewhere else to sustain yourself, like that this is literally what's keeping you going?
Izzy's dad wasn't well, and her family had very complicated beliefs about mental health.
Filipinos see mental health as so taboo. My dad demonized the medications that were asked of him to the point that, like, I think he, like, flushed them down the toilet once. There was an episode on that. Watching my parents' marriage dissolve and then find out that my dad had mental issues was a lot to deal with at 16. So now I have to, like, be a grown-up, take care of my siblings, be there for my mom, be there for my dad. This is when I started noticing that maybe I have, like, problems too, because this just got overwhelming so fast.
Izzy's grades began to slip, and the dream of going to college now felt completely out of reach. She felt like she was losing herself.
I just became really, really depressed, and I was like, I don't have an answer for this. And I still have to, like, maintain this ideal for everybody that I'm okay when I'm not okay. I don't know what to do. I can't ask my mom. She's going through a divorce. Can't ask my dad because she's going through the divorce. I only have younger siblings. There's nobody I can turn to. And I was just like, okay, so if I'm feeling sad right now and like all these Americans are promoting like antidepressants and I'm not even allowed to resort to that, what can I resort to? What will like sustain me?
So she turned to the only solution she could think of.
I was like, how did my dad cope? And then I was like, oh God, he would travel.
At 17, she found a program that would send her to a random part of the world for a year after high school. She'd study a new language, a new culture.
And I was like, this reminds me of a simpler time in my life that I very much enjoyed, and right now I hate myself, so I'm gonna like go to this info session.
It sounded like the perfect solution. Actually, it sounded like the only solution.
I remember making a pitch to my mom. She's like, well, why do you want to do this? You know, we came to America because you're supposed to go to college and you're supposed to go to this great school. And I was like, I'm just sad. I don't feel okay. I think I really need this. Like, travel. We love this. This whole family loves this. Please let me go. This is a tried and tested practice in this family. I'm going to come back better. And she's like, fine. It felt so normal to me to just be like, let's just get up and go. And I was like, maybe this is reckless and this is so restless, but I just want to go out there and go, and I know how easy it is to leave. And my dad was all about this. He's like, alternative year, yeah, go for it. Where are you going to go?
Izzy was placed in a rural village in Thailand. It was a challenging year, but she survived. And for the first time since her parents' divorce, she felt okay.
I really was there. And that's like the time when I was, I guess, present, because my mind didn't want to wander to home because of how like sad it was. And my mind didn't wander the future because I didn't really think I had a future. I felt healed, but not necessarily the way in which, like, I wasn't really suppressing things. I was kind of addressing things. It was good because I was okay on my own, and I was like, things are going to get better. And I came home, and the tone was different. Like, my parents' divorce was finalized. After Thailand, I was like, it was so easy to come back. I can keep on doing this for the rest of my life.
Traveling worked. And for the most part, life returned to normal. She felt like herself again, and soon she and her father were back on the move.
My dad was not only fond of like air travel, but he also was really good at road trips. So when I turned 20 and I got my first car, he's like, I'm going to teach you how to endure a long road trip yourself. And I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, where should we go? And I was like, I really like poutine, so let's go to Montreal. And he's like, let's do it. We did a 10-hour road trip to Montreal. Started at 5 a.m. just to get poutine. I'm not even joking. We crossed the border by 4 o'clock. But when we got to the border, the man was like, why are you coming? And we're like, oh, we really want to try poutine. He's like, poutine. But then he's like, when are you leaving? And we're like, oh, we're going to just get this poutine and cross the border back. And then he got really skeptical. He's like, wait, what? Think about how ludicrous this sounds. We're going into Canada for an hour to get just poutine. So after they let us go, they're like, okay, enjoy your poutine. We went to go get poutine in the French Quarter in Montreal, and then just drove back home. And we were home by 3 a.m. And I was just so accustomed to be able to make those requests and, again, have them actualized.
Izzy felt like things were getting better. And in a way, things were better. She was accepted to college, and at 21, decided to go back to Italy for her study abroad. She wanted to fulfill her dad's promise at the Trevi Fountain all those years ago. But shortly before she left, Izzy's world came to another abrupt halt.
And my dad ended up passing away before I ended up going to Italy, 3 months before.
Her father was young, only 49 years old, and his passing had been very unexpected. But future-oriented as always, he had been proactive about investing in life insurance. Even in his unexpected passing, Izzy felt that, in a way, her dad was still right there with her.
Before that, I didn't think I would be able to afford Italy. And it's not even I didn't think, I knew I couldn't afford Italy. And that just was enough for me to really appreciate Italy, to not worry about it. And I was like, wow, even after he's gone, he's still taking care of us. And that was really beautiful for me, and I was really all about honoring his life through me enjoying and taking every moment of that. Going to Trevi Fountain, I did it during the day, and I did it with my mom. It was super, super, super crazy, tons of tourists, just different in the light of day. I was like, okay, this is appropriate that I'm sharing it with so many people. But it was really jovial too, because I was sharing it with my mom, who also kind of had this lightness of being. And we really embraced that tourist feeling for a moment. I was like, I need to toss my coins in. I'm going to come back here again one day. But we were like, just like a very different circumstance. And I don't know, I play it in so much contrast, like day and night, like mom and dad, all of these tourists versus us completely alone.
A few months later, Izzy met up with her sister Mira in Morocco.
We were taking a road trip trying to see as much as we could in like 10 days with like 6 other people. And Mira's sitting right next to me and we're both looking out of the window. There's the Atlas Mountains and then all of a sudden Morocco turns into this topography of just like, it almost looks like Arizona wasteland. Completely flat except for on the horizon you have like these mountains that have a tabletop plateau shape. So they're like kind of boxy mountains. And I just like felt a tear like drop down from my face and I like looked over at her and she was also crying. And I was like, oh my God, he is here. Like I wasn't like dreaming about it. There was a shift in the air and I could just feel him like a weight on me. Like I feel like he was like right there. I just like couldn't see him, but he was right there. To turn around to see my sister crying too, I was like, she feels it. And she's like, are you thinking about dad? I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about dad. And like we just held each other's hands and silently sobbed. It was a really intimate moment.
Even though her dad wasn't around anymore, these moments out in the world got Izzy close to him and could evoke that magic and happiness she'd felt as a kid. Soon, travel wasn't just an escape from her sadness anymore. It was an attempt at being with her dad.
I keep on resorting to this past and it's just like, oh, maybe my dad was once here, or what happens if we ended up going here together? Just like all of these like hypotheticals, trying to like hit all these places my dad went and like where I want to be just to feel something.
She took every chance she could to travel. She signed up for volunteer opportunities, alternative spring breaks. Izzy was everywhere but present. Then Izzy graduated college. She knew that meant less opportunity to go out into the world, to escape and find her happiness when need be. So she decided to take her travel to the next level.
I decided that I would be my own expat. My first job out of college was moving to South Korea to be an English teacher, and that would be my way that I would sustainably like travel abroad. Being a study abroad student or like going on an educational program as opposed to like deciding to be an expat and like having to do all of the footwork to sustain yourself, very different things. And South Korea was my rude awakening. It was like, you're Filipino, so on a socioeconomic level, you are the lowest of the lowest in our economic run. And I was like, oh, no, I'm American. I belong in this school. I can teach English. I know how to do this. And they'd be like, but look at you. They told me to only speak English. They told me not to advertise my Filipino-ness. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. This makes me like sad. I don't want to be here. I want to be home. I don't want to do this. My dad never showed me that.
Alone and totally to her own devices abroad for the first time, Izzy realized that the world she had come to know and love, the one her father created for her, didn't really exist.
With my dad, travel always was synonymous to happiness, just to the sense of like unbridled freedom and so much joy and possibility. He was a really good explorer in the sense that he transformed every mundane act into something like new and fresh. I couldn't do that in Korea. I was like, this food doesn't taste the same without my family. The issues that were like deeply ingrained inside of me just like it came out.
Izzy was losing herself again. Being in a new place simply wasn't working anymore. In fact, it seemed that maybe it had never really worked in the first place.
I was very broken before I went to South Korea. I had a lot of mental issues that I was suppressing. And until I was in Korea, I was like, wow, I just really don't like myself, I guess, because I'm just so sad right now. And how can I fix that? And I was thinking about that with my dad, too. I was just like, I wonder if, like, again, he went to these places and he loved the way, like, this wine made him feel because he's in Argentina. But internally, how was he processing this? And I was just like, this kind of escapism is unattainable if it's unrealistic. There's a high that travel gives, and so we really are enamored by this high, but like all highs, you go down. And it was just like, I think about how frequently he would just go away and expect that after he came back, he was completely better. And that like worried me because I was starting to adapt these very harmful practices about mental health. It's just like, okay, if I travel, I feel so good. This is gonna sustain me for like the next 2 months before I get depressed again and I'm gonna go somewhere else again, right? And that's just not feasible.
In trying to honor her dad's life, Izzy had lost perspective on what it means to be happy and healthy. Luckily though, she knew she had the power to change things.
I think you can be your best self, like right here. And if you're not feeling okay right now, nowhere in this world is going to teach you that you're all right, or nowhere in the world you're going to feel better about yourself.
Izzy's year in South Korea was difficult to say the least. Between living alone in a brand new country and finally facing her mental health head on, Izzy was dealing with a lot. But as turbulent as it all was, there was a silver lining.
I ended up meeting my partner in South Korea, and he was loving it and I was hating it, but he like brought me up. My dad always believed too, like, the world does have these answers, and if I didn't like go outside in the world, I wouldn't have met like this partner of mine who's really just the love of my life. And the funny thing too is like I've never met somebody like my father, but he is very much like in terms of the mannerisms of like how much he loves me and prioritizes me and like understands why I value travel so much, and not in the cliche aspect, but he like really honors it as like this, again, form of therapy for me too. But he's also good about being like, okay, this was nice and you feel better, but like, do you really feel better? Is this a long-term better or is this a short-term better? Because now you have to like be good about doing the stuff that you need to for the long-term betterment. I remind myself, I am very much like my father, but I'm not my father. I have like different resources. I'm reflecting life differently. My treatment of life is different. My outlook of life is different. We're living parallel lives, like the parallels of our circumstance, and they might never touch again, but they're like mirroring themselves a lot.
Now, back in Boston after a 3-year journey from Korea to Vietnam and all over Asia, Izzy is truly working on being well. She acknowledges and appreciates the realities of traveling, the things she's lost and gained along the way, and balances her self-care and love of the world on her blog, The Next Somewhere.
Doing this blog has helped me, in a way, start chronicling this journey, and one day I want to publish everything that I've accrued over the years into this little keepsake, in a sense, to give to my my family one day. I'm always like very past-oriented and very future-oriented, but never present-oriented. So I think it's a good way to, honor my journey in the now for the future.
While Izzy continues to navigate her journey with travel and mental health, that longing to honor and find her dad in the places she goes is still very much on her mind.
Travel for me has been like touched with a sense of longing. Every time I'm somewhere else, I want to share it with my dad. This is what I feel like was my father's legacy. Every single person in my family has been affected by his longing of the world. We have like this Wanderlust gene directly from him, and for the most part, I think we're always going to turn to travel to kind of honor his life. But I mean, I have to also think too that I'm traveling for myself and that I'm traveling because I worked hard to earn this vacation. I don't know, just like I really do believe that I'm gonna like just see him one day and be like, oh my gosh, like gonna be a moment for me. But when I go to a new place, I visually like picture him there, say his name aloud, because when I was in South Dakota, they have this thing that when you leave a place, you should call your name out loud 4 times so that you pick up pieces of your spirit. So I do want to leave my name in the places that I go, but I also leave my dad's name in the places I go to as well.
EF Outbound is brought to you by EF Education First, the world leader in international education. This episode was hosted and produced by Shelby El-Atmani with help from me, Meg Martineau. It was sound designed by Billy Werasnik. For more information on the podcast, head over to ef.com/podcast. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to share your own transformative travel story, email us at outbound@ef.com.